Man, so I've been watching your content. It's incredible. It's wild. It's chickens. Um, Man, tell me about yourself. Tell me what you do. I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, the short of it is I'm born and raised a city boy. We spent about 10 months in Central California near my great uncle who had 40 plus acres of peach orchard. And he would raise his own mules and enter into the competitions called Mule Days in Central California. He had like 8 blue ribbons with this one mule. And so we had like, I love the city though. I was like, please don't ever fucking move to the country, you know? And then haven't played football and then got into fighting and really enjoyed the city. And once we started having kids and kind of seeing, really spending more time in the country, especially for our events, I coach with Aubrey Marcus in something called Fit for Service. And so we went on to Livingston, Montana or Lake Tahoe. And you're just like, this is where I want to be. I want to be in the fucking land, immersed in nature, you know, and surrounded by it. There's a different smell. There's a different feel to it, to the energetics of it. And really started getting addicted to that. And then 2020 happened and I was like, yo, we have to have the ability to grow our own food. We have to have the ability to bring people in because our events live and die face to face. You know, like we teach online, but that's meaningless. It's when we meet up and go through holotropic breath work and some of the different things that actually crack people wide open together. That's what gets people to want to come back. And that's what really moves the bar for us. So seeing that, like, even in Arizona, which was really cool, they still, you know, would allow up to 20 people with masks. So we're like, we got 150 people. So we terraformed his backyard. He's got a spot out there with 46 acres. And we had 150 people in that backyard, maskless, dancing ecstatically in October of 2020. It was the first time Porongi played the entire year a live show. And no one got fucking sick. But it was magic, right? And I was like, we have to have this in Texas. And so when On It sold, they gave us the opportunity. And we went in it together, and I've been building out there. Our house should be done soon enough. I've been really managing the farm side of things, from cows to sheep, and I brought in a team of awesome guys. You know, I got an animal manager, a GM, a lot of cool shit that many farms don't, you know, have the fortune. And I've worked with some of the best farmers in the world to learn as fast as I can. A lot of times just a guy and his wife. You know, like dad was an investor, 50-50. And it's literally a dude and his wife running the farm 12 hours a day with 3 little kids. And like, that's Daniel Griffith. I'm like, that's a fucking whole different thing. So I'm very fortunate to be able to podcast still and coach and dad and do all the things that I'm doing while taking on it, you know, as much as I can with the farm as really like the thing that brings me the most joy, you know.
Bring the mic a little closer.
Mm-hmm.
Have you
I
noticed?
sound so clear in this. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
used to the fist in front of the face, you know. That's probably where you want it, but it sounds so clear compared to mine that I'm like, yeah, this is fine, 5 inches. Let me see if I can shorten this chair up a little bit.
You're a tall guy. I think it's all the way down already.
It might be.
Yeah.
That's all right. I can get a little forward lean here with you.
Man, so... And then how do you...
I'm going to take off the sweater.
Yeah. Where do you want to... How many people do you want to lay it out for? Just for you, the farm, or for a whole community? It sounds like you're building like your own city.
So this is great. We had Tucker Max has become a good buddy of mine. He wrote I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell. He's out west in Dripping Springs. He had one of his friends wrote an amazing article in like 21 on like how to build your own town effectively. And it was with Texas in mind. So like based on Texas law and stuff like that. And at the time, I had met a few different people. I'm buddies with Mickey Willis and Del Bigtree. Our kids were in the same school together. So, you know, people who are pushing the envelope in a certain direction. And I really do buy into a lot of what they're teaching. The more I thought about that, like, you know, like a true community, like you're talking about all sorts of shit, bylaws and fucking like relationship styles and things like that. And I talked to a lot of people about it. Dominer is one of the longest running in the world in northern Italy, and they have 1,000+ people. They do their own art, you know, their own food, their own school, their own everything, and it's really exceptional. And there's a lot of shit to it, you know, it's a lot of moving pieces. And so at the end of it, I was like, you know, I want a place where we can gather and build community, like we do in Fit for Service and like we do with the farm. The farm's named Gardeners of Eden. So we have events just for the farm where people come out and they get to learn permaculture or regenerative design, things like that. So I think there's ways in which we educate and build to the future But as far as living with people, that's a whole different animal, you know? So it's just us there and our farm manager. And the GM is nearby. He's got a place about 15 minutes away. So he's just a quick jump over to come by. And it's really, you know, I want to build community with the events and things like that and still have a place that's our own as people take off, you know, like we don't have to worry about having neighbors that are, you know, right now we live in South Austin and it's like if my neighbor farts, I can hear it. That's how close these suburbs are stacked on top of each other. Each one's like a tenth of an acre. So at the end of really rabbit holing all that stuff, we decided it'd be better to just have our own place and build community in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's 118 acres too. So it's not like it's big, but it's not like 10,000 acres, you know?
Yeah. Dang, that's still really big. Man, so were you always interested in like that sort of living, or you said you loved the big city back in the day, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Sunnyville, which was it was a small town in my mind. There's a population of 120,000, but near San Jose, which was 1 million, San Francisco and Oakland, which were, you know, all around 1 million. It seemed really small to me. And Cupertino, you know, where Apple was founded, there's like 55,000 population. Those are small towns, but it was still the city. You know, like I could access food and movies and you know, a lot of people come to the football games and shit like that. And so I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the vibe of it. Also, you know, throughout college, enjoyed the nightlife. Being in Arizona, love Scottsdale, love going out, love partying. And I think just as I matured, really and got into plant medicine really helped me with that, like the deepening my connection to nature, you know, then it was something I started to crave more, where it wasn't like, hey, we're going to go to the Amazon in April, and that's the only time I'm in nature all year. It was like, no, I need this all the time. And really one of the things that's cool is, you know, from my understandings of spiritual texts and my own alchemy of those within plant medicines, the journeys itself is that, you know, part of the as above, so below is realized in nature. And I realized this in my own backyard on a tenth of an acre as we started planting in bamboo and different trees and stuff like that. Like life flourished there. We created its own eco field. And Dr. Will Teagle's really, he passed away a couple years ago. He was in Wimberley, great medicine man. He wrote a book called Walking with Bears where he really talked about that. He had a PhD in physics and a PhD in psychology and was a full-on medicine man. And, you know, he's like, even though you're on such a small plot, you're creating your own eco field that is going to reverberate throughout the totality. And the more I did that, the more I realized like this little tiny ass patch of backyard was a sanctuary for us in a city, in a big city, you know, and that just made me want to crave like a bigger canvas. You know, you paint on a little 10 by 10 square, a mandala. I'm like, all right, that finally came out good. Now give me something bigger. Give me a bigger canvas. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things is that we get to, you know, have a 118 acre canvas now that we get to paint on and really watch mature. We did, one of the first things we did was our permaculture garden, which is 400 fruit and nut trees. And we dug out a spiral waterway for it so that, you know, and use the materials there as berms for the trees. And it looks incredible, but it's a lot like having kids. Like you put these trees in the ground and the first few years, they really need you or they'll die. In the first 15 years, you know, until they come to maturity, they still need you. But after about 15 years, they don't really need you, you know, then they're going to just operate just fine with the design of the project. But having kids and doing the trees ourselves is like, now we're actually watching these things grow and my kids are growing beside them just the same. Right. And like, it's really powerful to put into perspective. A lot of people think, you know, in spiritual communities, you know, 7 generations forward, 7 generations back, things like that. As words get tossed around a lot. There's not a lot of ways in the modern world in which we can actually think of that. And we just got a big sequoia from California. You can get like a tree it's like a seed in a little bundle, and it's guaranteed to work. And sequoias are actually they're pretty tolerant for drought, heat, and freezes, so they'll do decent here. But I'm looking at everybody. There's places, you know, in Texas where they're growing sequoias. You know, and sequoias are one of the fucking biggest trees on the planet. And in 5 years, it's going to be up to my knee. It's going to look like a little bush. In 10 years, it'll be up to my shoulder, maybe, right? So it's very long. It's going to take a long ass time. I'll never experience the shade of that tree, you know, the Zen koan. And at the same time, that tree could be 3,000 years old before it dies, you know, and I'm going to put that on our land and take as best care as I can. as it needs me the most early on.
Holy shit. So maybe generations after generations will be able to enjoy the shade of that.
Yeah. And the same thing is such a long tree, like such a growth rate. It's hard to fathom. My kid won't see it. My grandkids won't see that thing at full grown. Our grandkids won't see it. The day they die, they'll be 110 years old and they're not going to see that thing even close to full grown. Like, that's hard to imagine shit like that. But, you know, and the animals a whole different thing too. Like, getting involved with the animals. Plant medicines wanted to make me connect to my food in a way that I hadn't previously, you know, and I was watching documentaries like Food Inc., Biggest Little Farm was a great one, Kiss the Ground, Common Ground, all really good ones on regenerative agriculture and that reconnection to food. But I think hunting, you know, well, the first time I was able to harvest an animal myself was like a whole different experience. And then I worked with a guy named Monsell Denton, who you should meet. He's out here. He does sacred hunts, and in that, he has his Native American church license. So there's a ceremony as a part of that. And the hunt itself is a ceremony when treated as such. But like with that other ceremonial aspect, there's nothing like that on the fucking planet. You know, there's no experience like it. And that reconnection to actually, there's nothing else that's quite like, it's kind of like fighting. Like, you know, you talk to a guy like Andy Stump, who, you know, was a jumper in the Navy SEALs, and now he's doing squirrel suit shit. You're like, oh, I get it. You're jumping out of an airplane at 30,000 feet with an oxygen mask because you used to do something very similar, right? Like this kind of scratches that itch. For me, not many things. I don't want to lose brain cells again. I don't want to fucking get hit in the head and get hurt because I have kids. But at the same time, I love sparring. I love jiu-jitsu. I love doing those things. And the hunt is one of those things that you can't feel really anywhere else because it's every fucking emotion. It's all of it. It's pure exhilaration, pure joy and excitement. It's the pride of I can provide for my family. I can provide for the tribe. And it's the holy shit, I just killed something, right? Like I fucking took something's life. So this thing was alive and it's dead now because of me, right? Like that's you don't get that anywhere else. There's no sparring for that. There's no training for that. And it's all the fucking feels at once. It's a weird thing to feel that kind of exhilaration and, you know, a pure rush of joy and pain at the same time. It's fucking super weird and necessary, I think. You know, like if we're going to eat meat, if we're going to have a connection to our food, you know, being a part of that, even if you're just like, when my son was 4, we brought him out to Rome Ranch in Fredericksburg. He sat on my lap for a bison harvest and watched the bison go down at 20 yards. And we went up to it and put our hands on its warm body and just prayed for it and thanked it for its body and knew that it was gonna grow us. You know, my little girl was in the womb at the time. And so it literally built her body. You know, and thinking of things that way, it creates a different style of relationship. And so like the animals on our land, we love them dearly and they're food, you know, there's a different type of relationship, but, we want to provide the very best life for them. So they're happy, they're healthy, they're the best of the best. They're regenerating the land. The land itself is becoming better from them. And in turn, that's better food that goes into us.
Did you grow up on a farm?
No, like I said, I had my great uncle's farm was out in Modesto. But believe it or not, none of us grew up on a farm, other than my wife. She's the only one that had farming experience out of like 8 to 10 pretty full-on team members. You know, like our animal manager lives on site. The GM lives 15 minutes away. Our plant manager's there 5 days a week. She's the only one who had farming experience where she had like delivered pigs and delivered lambs and participated in, you know, chopping chickens' heads off and like full gamut, you know, like plucking feathers, doing the whole thing. Or baby chicks, you got to wipe their ass with Vaseline or like lanolin so they don't get stuck, because if their poop gets stuck to their feathers, they'll die. So like there's just all these little intricacies, you know, that we're doing for the first time. Natasha's her name. She was the only one that really had experience with that. But all of us had a genuine desire for it, especially in the wake of 2020 and like being a lot that's uncertain in the world with where our food's coming from. And, you know, a lot of us having kids, like it just made sense. Like, let's dive in the fucking deep end and do this.
And what was 2020 the significant change where you were like no more of eating garbage and living in this big
No,
cities,
no. I
or?
mean, the fighting for me was the stomping grounds for me to understand what worked and what didn't.
Mm-hmm.
In football, I could get away with. I could go out Arizona State, especially being young. I could go out and fucking snort coke and pound beers and wake up at 5 a.m. on the practice field, run sprints, lift weights, like it was unstoppable. You know, like they were burning the candle at both ends. But when you're 20 or 21, it's like none of that shit mattered. When I got into fighting after football, it was so much more demanding than football ever was on my body, from a recovery standpoint, from a cardio standpoint. Like, it was pushing me well beyond what I thought I was capable of. And anything I did there, I could feel if it worked or feel if it was a detriment. And I got introduced to a guy named Paul Chek right when I got into it, and read How to Eat, Move, Be Healthy. I actually watched one of his DVDs first. It was on VHS, called Flatten Your Abs Forever. And I was like, dope, man, I want to get shredded. I know, I'll flatten my abs forever. And it was all on soil health, the microbiome, gut issues. And I was like, all right, I'm going to read this guy's book, because I flat out refused to read. Like, I'm done with college. I'm not reading shit. And I watched that and I was like, all right, give me his book. It was the strength coach that I had. And so,
How old were you?
26, maybe 27. And so I had some years of debauchery, underneath me. And as I started to really come to understand the importance of organic food and regenerative agriculture and the differences, and even how organics has been bastardized with payments and labels and all that, that really got me into the space. And so I could feel that, and having Bear, I didn't make any money in the UFC. I lived in my mom's detached garage the whole time I was there. I had a fucking job at a titty bar. I was bouncing, bartending, and managing a strip club while fighting pretty much my whole career and doing personal training. And the healthiest food we could buy was grass-fed ground beef, grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef. And that was it. 5 nights a week, that's what we ate.
And you could feel the difference.
That's no doubt, absolutely. Well, here's a funny test that I didn't realize till I read that book. My mom would yell at me for peeing in the backyard. And I'd say, how do you know? And she goes, it stinks and I can see brown circles. And so I go back there, I'm like, it doesn't stink. And sure enough, I go back there and there's fucking brown circles everywhere that I pissed on her green grass. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. And then I go through the book. Oh yeah, glyphosate, all this other shit, right? Start to clean up the diet. I'm eating out less. And now when I pee on grass, it doesn't die, right? It's like, if grass is dying from what's coming through my urine, what's sticking around inside me? And we know glyphosate is a known carcinogen and a whole host of other shit that was probably in my body too. But at the same time, like, that's one pretty prime example. Like, if it can destroy the lawn, it's fucking me up. Like, there's no two ways about that. And so, that book changed my life, How to Eat, Move, Be Healthy. It also lit a fire for me to learn more. Like, if one book could teach me this much about health and wellness, it lit the fire. I wanted to know about recovery. I got into Dr. Kelly Starrett's work on mobility. Became good buddies with Aaron Alexander, who was also homing the mobility game. And just Wim Hof, started rabbit holing anything that could help. And I was never really good enough in MMA to just sit back like Cormier. Daniel Cormier was one of my teammates and wrestling coaches. Cain Velasquez, Luke Rockhold, all these guys became UFC world champion. And DC would be eating Popeye's, fucking chicken and playing NBA 2K for hours in between practices. And I was just sitting there just reading nonstop. And, I've got my Normatec boots on and I'm getting in the ice bath. I'm doing everything I can to recover. And I think that was the second mountain. That was for me the truest education. That was the deeper education than anything I learned in college. And I learned, a decent amount. I'm still a senior at ASU when I quit, but communications major. Oddly enough, being a podcaster, and a coach, like, I'm using that degree for something that I don't have. But the second mountain was really, one out of necessity. And that was what really drew me towards regenerative agriculture. And like I said, I had made buddies with Taylor at Rome Ranch, like Force of Nature guys. They're in Whole Foods and Sprouts and everywhere. And getting to go to their farms and be a part of that, it made it more real. It was tangible. Like, damn, these guys got 1,500 acres and they've got bison. And I'm talking to him about, which animals would you have? And he's like, well, these guys aren't domestic. I wouldn't necessarily have them on a smaller plot of land because you have kids. That's good to know. All right, cool. Taylor's actually the one that set us up with our sheep guy. His name's Austin Dillon, the regenerative renegade. And he's got sheep for the last 20 generations. If they got sick more than once, he ate them. If a mom didn't take care of her kid, he ate her. If they got hoof rot more than once, he'd eat them. Like he just culled the weakest generation after generation. No shots, no medicine, no nothing. Purely fucking as organic and natural as possible for this spot, right? For Central Texas, South Central Texas. And the animals are incredible. It's the best tasting meat I've ever had in my life. I got to hook you guys up. Once you do a little farm tour, I'll hook you guys up with some lamb before you go. It's fucking mind-blowing. The kids love it. It tastes phenomenal. You can see the quality, like the yellowness of the fat and just the color that's in it, the carotenoids from getting the green grass year-round. But yeah, that was the draw. The draw came from health and wellness and performance and then longevity and just deepening that connection to food. And plant medicines were a big part of that. The health education from Paul Chek was a huge part of that. And then really just wanting that for ourselves. It wasn't, there wasn't a thing where it was like, let's be farmers. It was 2020 was the straw that broke the camel's back, where it was like, it's not enough for me to know that I can drive 90 minutes west and set up a tent at Rome Ranch, even though that's been offered, even though I could do that. That's not enough, we did need a space too where we could gather people for events. That was a big thing from a business standpoint, being able to keep that alive and running. And so don't approve that already, and Texas, I think, was one of the first places to, take off the restraints. Florida and Texas did. And it's funny because I still watch the UFC. And so UFC went to Jacksonville, Florida, I think, and then Houston, Texas right after that. And, Gavin Newsom's like his head's going to explode. He's like, everyone's going to die, to 20,000 people, and if you think about like sick populations, like everyone who's dying has comorbidities. Fight fans, not necessarily the most healthy population. They can be healthy, but beer drinking, lowered immune system, spitting in each other's face while they're screaming for their guy. If there's a melting pot of a place where people are going to get fucked up, and we actually have to worry about this, a UFC fight's probably it. Right? If you're talking about a real pandemic, 20,000 people screaming in each other's faces, that's probably a fucking melting pot for this to go down. No one got sick in Florida. No one got sick in Texas. And so that just doubled down on the fact, like, we're in a good spot. We made it to the right place. And let's really, honor the fact that there's not a lot of people. If you're in California, different places like that, you can't meet that way. You can't meet anywhere. There's no place in California where you can do what you're doing legally. People can do it here. Anyone can get on a flight and come to us, and we get to meet still. And the community piece is, even though I don't want to live in community is fucking massive. It's absolutely massive. And Charles Eisenstein's a buddy, and he's like, you could have all the guns and the ammo in the world. You could have a 30-year stockpile of dehydrated, freeze-dried foods. You could have all these things, but if you don't have community, it's worthless. It's worthless because people will find that you got the stash. You got no one protecting you, and it's like, even if you survived alone, how miserable would that be? Community is the entire thing. So it's been a ride, but I feel like there's a nudge from spirit pushing me in a certain direction, and I just got to listen to that.
Can you tell me about the events that you guys are throwing?
Yeah. So this is we're going on year 6 now. So we've got 5 years of Fit for Service. As I mentioned, Aubrey Marcus is one of my closest friends. He's actually the reason I moved here we were in Vegas for 4 months. And we met at a Paleo FX conference I was speaking at. He was a speaker at. We ended up sharing the same flight back. And a lot of synchronicities led us to moving here, but he brought me in as director of human optimization on it. I got to create supplements with him. We worked on Alpha Brain Black Label and a bunch of other goodies. Total nitric oxide was one of the products that I worked on. And he had me take over the On It podcast, which actually what became the Kingsbury podcast. So mad blessings and super grateful for that relationship. And a couple years in, he told me about one of his visions he had at Don Howard's Spirit Quest. I think it was on Wachuma, where he said, I really want to put this together. I don't know what it looks like, but I basically want to take people through the best practices that have moved us, that are legal, right? Like, we're not taking them to the Amazon. We're not giving them plant medicine, but like, what are the things that really crack us open? How can we deliver legally an altered state of consciousness held in a sacred container that's going to move people and get them outside of their comfort zone and get them to become better people? And at the same time, through that walk of fire you take together, build community in a way where like we're talking lifelong friends, lifelong partners, lifelong everything. And, having done it for 5 years, it's really dope to see because anybody who's stayed longer than one trimester, so if you've been to more than one event, 100% of them have a friend they'll consider to have till the day they die. There's kids now from Fit for Service where two single people met, Fit for Service, they got married, they had kids, and like we have kids that came out of that. Tons of business, spiritual narcissists. There's a lot of clothing going around, like clothing companies that birthed from that, where people got together and like, I want to make a better organic, swaggy something for Burning Man or for Tulum, like that kind of thing gets birthed. The business stuff's cool, but for me, relationships are everything. Like when I see kids being born from what we're doing, that's a big fucking deal. Like it gets me choked up. And the community thing is really cool because we kind of set a table and, we let the people come to the table and we see how it works out and other people's experiences from that. I don't think we had any idea it would turn into what it has. We have generally 150 to 200 people at each event. We go all over the world. We used to go to Tulum. We've been to Costa Rica, staying stateside more or less for the next year, but we'll be back in Montana in May. We're going to Sedona in September and Malibu in January next year. And so we have a trimester long where we basically teach one particular topic. And over the years, we've taught a wide variety of things. Like last year, we taught on the fourfold song of the self from the Book of Solomon. So that was the song of the self, the song of the tribe, the song of humanity, and the song of the cosmos. And we rolled the last two in together since they're beyond tribe, and just laid those two in together. And it's always been great doing that. This year, we're changing to academy. So it's going to be more university style, smaller groups. We've kind of listened to people, we have been listening to our members who have said, it's really awesome having the big group and getting to know people, but it's always really hard initially to get to know somebody when there's 200 fucking people there. So one of the requests was to actually bring in smaller groups and take a deep dive on different topics. And so we got together, me, Aubrey, Caitlin, and Godzi were the four main coaches that have been there from the start. And we really thought about what would we teach, and what are the things that are the most necessary if we get into these little, deep dive cohorts. So there's the physical, the mental, the emotional, relationships, financial, and spiritual. And so I'm going to be teaching the physical. Godzi's going to be teaching the mental. Caitlin will be on emotional. Ob and Vire will be on relationships. Ob and Clay, our chief marketing officer, are going to teach financial. And then we're all going to round table the spiritual because no one can hold that alone. But I'm stoked for that, where I'm going to have people for 13 fucking weeks. I'm going to deep dive a lot of Paul's teachings and Kelly Starrett's and, everyone that I've learned from a longevity standpoint to a performance standpoint. Dr. Jack Cruz, I know you're buddies with Matt Maroka. That's who introduced, and so it's like I've had the fortune of learning and building relationships with the very best in the world. And I can relay that in a really unique and novel way to people. And then we all get to have the same meetup. So it's just a smaller group initially. Then we do the same meetup where we're going to go through these, these really challenging and yet moving and transformative experiences together. So it's a new look, and I'm super excited about it because, you do the same thing for 5 years with moderate changes, and it's like, let's do a whole different thing right now. And we've had a really good response from that.
Do you homeschool?
We do. Yeah. So that's funny. That's something that too is at a necessity.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like you would send your kid to a public school.
No, my wife was homeschooled up until high school. Mm-hmm. And so I knew she had experience with that. And we had talked about it. And I was like, it's a fucking big one. Because it's something we had talked about before was, and I'm not like right-wing conservative, Mr. fucking, it's not how I grew up. I grew up in the Bay Area, you know what I'm saying? Like I saw gay people kissing and it was fucking normal. It wasn't weird to me. And at the same time, I wouldn't consider myself a liberal now by today's standards, not by any fucking means.
I know, I see your shirt. I like your shirt.
Well, here's my boy.
Yeah.
Yep, Bobby Kennedy. And where were we here before I got sidetracked? Nothing about Bobby Kennedy now.
Is that a mushroom?
It is a mushroom with 24 on it for Bobby. Even though he's never done plant medicines, his kids have. Where were we? So not right ring growing up. We're talking about the
homeschool.
Yeah, homeschool. So when I talked to Tosh, like we knew we were going to have kids. We just didn't know when. And it was actually ayahuasca that showed us we're going to have kids. And it's not going to be later. It's going to be right now. And I was like, holy shit. So we had these back-to-back journeys where we saw
together
the same vision together, where we could see that I was holding a child and she was holding the two of us. And then the next journey we did together a month later, same thing, only now it's a boy. And I freaked the fuck out. Like, I'm ready to be a dad. Like, all the shit started boiling up. I don't have insurance. I don't have a 401k. I live in my mom's detached garage. I've made no money in fighting. I've actually accrued debt from fighting. 1,000 reasons to now's not the right time. And then as that really swelled and bubbled up, I realized that's just what everyone else says. There's no perfect time for a kid. And it just moved away from me. And I was like, oh, fuck. Okay. All right. Can I be a dad? Yeah, I can be a dad right now. And we got pregnant with Bear a month later. And we've had him at Stanford's Children's Hospital. We brought him home to the garage. And after about a year, provider energy switched on hard. I was like, I can't raise this kid in my mom's fucking garage. I got to do something. And that led us twice to move in the same year, where we moved to Vegas, started the podcast, and then moved to Austin right after that to start working on it. And all along that path, like I had talked with Tosh about, I want you to do whatever the fuck you want to do. What I don't want to do is have someone else raise our kids. So if we have kids and you have a passion, I want to make sure you can still do that passion. But I don't want you to need to work for money. I want to make enough so that you can do what you want to do, not what you have to do. And that's not me saying don't have a job. That's me saying I want you to be able to raise our kids, because I can't. I can only be there part-time. And if we're both part-time, our kids don't have a blood relative. Like, our parents aren't. They're awesome. My mom moved here, but they're not going to raise our kids. They did an okay job with us, and I'm thankful for them, but they're not in a position where we want to be like, yeah, raise this generation now. Like, no, thank you. So that said, knowing, like, I was basically the way we'd worked it out. This is why I point out I'm not very traditional, but when it came to this, I had seen so many friends in the Bay Area, which is high stakes, fucking super high cost of living, one of the highest cost of living in the world. Dad's making tons of money. The mom's a nurse and she's making tons of money. They have their kid. As soon as that kid can go to daycare, mom's back at work. And who's raising your kid? I don't know. They don't fucking know. They've got no idea other than a fucking Google review of who's raising their kid, right? And so I wanted to avoid that like the plague. And then at the same time, as Bear became old enough, it was like, damn, dude, parenting's super hard. Like, I could see, get my kid out of here, take him to fucking school. Somebody else do this for us, Like, I could totally get it. And, thankfully I made enough money where we could go to private schools. We took him to Austin Waldorf. But all this shit kind of played, like I said, spirit nudging me in a certain direction. Bear's in school at Waldorf in 2019. 2020 happens. And Steiner, when you sign on for Waldorf, they make you sign a 1-page paper where you got to initial like 20 lines and then sign at the bottom, no screens, no cell phones, no TV. If you guys watch movies, titrate that down. If you watch one movie a week, make it once a month, and then make it not once a month. Like, you get rid of the fucking screens. And Steiner was adamantly against that. Because if you're television, if you're being told a vision, you're no longer accessing your own imagination. A lot of kids at Waldorf, they're like playing with sticks and shit. They don't even have like He-Man or fucking G.I. Joe. They're actually using their imaginations to make sense of why this stick is a machine gun or why this stick is a helicopter, and then that's actually the thing that's going to help facilitate their expansion into this world as somebody that's a creator, not just a fucking cog in the machine. So a lot of that made sense to me. And then 2020 happened, and we've all signed the paperwork, and now they're talking about doing online education. I was like, and
even Waldorf.
Yeah, and Waldorf. Now, the Waldorf, the good thing is they do 3 years of kindergarten, 4, 5, and 6. So you're like a rookie. You know 2 grades ahead of you and 2 grades behind you once you go in. And now that made sense too. So like when you're older, you're teaching the other kids. You're the leader. When you're younger, you're looking to the older kids for support. And really, it's a brilliant model, but it's very expensive for kindergarten. It was the second year of kindergarten. And now they wanted to charge $1,600 a month for online education. I'm like, it's fucking kindergarten. A teacher came by and gave us a ball of yarn for some of the knitting stuff. And I was like, I can go to Michael's and pick up the ball of yarn. This ain't worth $1,600, you know? So like, a lot of parents started complaining, and I was like, and what are we doing, dude? Like, Steiner was to fucking get these kids outside. We don't need to worry about shit here. So a lot of things are starting to not vibe with that school. And a lot of the parents left, and they started a different school out west, which I don't want to give away the name, but it's a co-op. And that's where I met Mickey Willis and Del Bigtree and a couple guys that had moved out. Vanderbeeks, fucking awesome families, really awesome families, and super like-minded. And that was Waldorf inspired, where a lot of teachers had come from Waldorf and were doing similar things. And they did some things good, but it was also their first year. You know, there was a lot of onboarding headaches and things like that. And so we were thinking, same thing. And that wasn't super cheap either. It was like, this is Bear's third year of kindergarten. If we're going to try homeschooling, we should find out if this is going to work. And we should do it now, not later. You know, like if he comes in a year late, if he's taking first grade as a second grader, big deal. There's a lot of positives there from an athletic standpoint and a maturity standpoint to hold him back. So if we lose a year because homeschooling is that bad, that's still a good option, you know? And what we found was it was incredibly challenging the first 9 months because kids are so used to, we all need it. You know, we know kids need it. We know the elderly need it, structure. And then for some reason, adults think they don't need it, but all humans need structure. And if you pull that away from kids, it's like the world is fucking falling apart, you know? And so that was hard for 9 months. But once we built some structure into the day, we found him excelling in a lot of shit. He reads music now. He plays violin. We'd have a private violin teacher come in because we had all this, you know, we're saving a shit ton of money. So we could afford family vacations. We could afford bringing in really high-end teachers. We could go to the best jiu-jitsu school in Austin, which is Tim sent me to. You know, there's a lot of cool things that we could do holding on to that. It hasn't been easy, but at the same time, you know, I had Dr. Thomas Cowan on the podcast, and he told me about a book called Deschooling Society by Ivan Illich. Fantastic fucking book. And there's a lot in that book I don't need to get into because it rabbit holes some pretty, it's a red pill on education for sure. Let me just put it that way. But one of the things Thomas Cowan brought up was he's like, you're not homeschooling. Stop saying that. You're unschooling. And so he gave me an example. One of the ladies who left Waldorf in California was a 30-year teacher there. And she agreed to come out of retirement to teach 4 kids that were like family friends between the ages of 10 and 12. All 4 kids between the ages of 10 and 12. All of them unschooled, meaning none of them could read between 10 and 12. Right. So not a little bit behind their peers, way the fuck behind their peers. Unschooled, meaning no school until they're ready. That's what that means. Like you don't fucking put a book in front of them until they're ready. And so once these kids had a reason to learn, they said, do you want to learn these things? And you could, you know, like he used the example, you want to build a tree house? That's math. That's geometry, right? Like you're baking these into things where, and Waldorf understood that too. If you can build it in the 3D, you're going to fucking remember that because you create something. It's real. It's not a fucking mathematical equation. It became real when you built the thing yourself, right? So, damn it, where was I? Waldorf, homeschool, Ivan Illich. So the 10 to 12-year-olds, none of them could speak. Within 2 years, or none of them could read rather. Within 2 years, all of them are reading and writing better than their peers, mathematics better than their peers. So when a 2-year span, not only did they catch up, they surpassed everyone that you would grade them against. And all 4 kids were taking college level courses in the thing they desired. All 4. So when the 10-year-old became 12, college level. When the 12-year-old became 14, college level. In at least the subjects that they cared about. That's fucking bananas. Right. And yeah, it's N equals 4, you know, it's not that big of a group. And it's like, there's a lot of other N equals 4, N equals 1, N equals 2 of kids doing this. And, you know, when you really, if you red pill education, understand what it's for, it's not to educate, it's to indoctrinate. And I think that becomes more and more clear the more we look at shit like critical race theory and all these other things that are being crammed down kids' throats. Gender fluidity, you know, like a lot of this stuff is done by design. There's a great book called Controligarchs by Seamus Bruner. who really outlines, the history of different players, that you might hear like an Alex Jones throw, George Soros, and here's like, hey, you kind of didn't tell me much about George Soros other than ranting and yelling at him, and I love Alex Jones, but like the book really details where these people fit into the equation and what they're trying to accomplish and the why behind their motives. And then it becomes pretty fucking obvious. It's like, oh, okay, there's a plan. There's the plan is in place, and these are some of the action steps, and it makes sense. It just makes sense. So I think we're not opposed. There are some high-level schools, and each Waldorf's different. So I don't want to shit on Waldorf altogether. I love the teachings of Rudolf Steiner. We farm biodynamically, which is based on Steiner's teachings. And Steiner knew a lot more than just about farming, right? So like I've been studying under him via Dr. Robert Gilbert, who's been on the podcast, been on Paul Checks a couple times. Brilliant, brilliant dude who really understood like a lot of the teachings and wisdom of the ancient mystery schools, and like not just the historical context, but like what they were trying to do to elevate their awareness and elevate their compassion and operate from the heart center. So Steiner's phenomenal, and I think that Waldorf can be. Czech has his kids in Waldorf because it's still a good program out where he is in San Diego. For us, it didn't make sense anymore, and there's been times where homeschooling is that hard, where you're just like, dude, maybe we just wait a year, take a year off, or maybe we find a local Montessori school or something like that and see if he likes that. All those questions come up because there's no part of parenting that's easy. It's all fucking work. And even when you think you've got it down, your kid changes, you change, and everything becomes brand new again, all over again. One of my good friends and mentors out in Sedona is a woman named Anahata Ananda, and she's a mother of fraternal twins, boy and a girl, and they're like 22 or 23 now. She's like, your job's never going to stop as dad or mom. Not if you're a good mom or dad. Right? Your role will change from governor to friend and confidant, and hopefully someone that's on the council, right? But you don't command your kids when they're in their 20s. At the same time, that there's a requirement for that when they're young. Otherwise, they fucking run the show. And I just sent you a brilliant book called The Collapse of Parenting by Leonard Sachs, who's a family physician, MD, and a PhD in psychology. Fucking brilliant, brilliant dude. I sent it to Tim Kennedy and JP Sears recently as well. It had an awesome podcast that led me to this book of his. That role is there by design. To be a father, to be a mother, you get to be their friend only if you're their parent first, right? The friendship is not the meat and potatoes. The role of father, the role of mother, that's the meat and potatoes. The side that comes with that is your kids' respect because you're their parent. If you only try to be their friend, there's no respect. And Gabor Mate wrote about this too in a great book called Hold On to Your Kids. The friend-to-friend attachment instead of child-to-parent attachment is why we see gangs. It's why we see fucking a whole host of things that are wrong with the world today. And there's a way we can reclaim that, and it starts by saying, I got to do the hard job of telling you no. I got to do the hard job of saying, you don't get to have that. It's time for bed. You can yell at me all you want. That's okay. I'm not going to hit you. I'm not going to yell back. Good night. I still love you. Like that's a part of the fucking deal. So in all the interactions, there's pushback on school and shit like that and everything else. But I also see excellence there. I see a kid reading music. I see a kid who can play songs by heart, like different Christmas songs. You just play by heart. And he went and played, we were at First Friday event in Lockhart, and he was playing in front of the local organic eatery, and people were throwing him tip money, and he was super stoked. So right around Christmas, and he's just playing like 5 songs on repeat, but he had them all memorized as a 7-year-old. Like you're doing good, buddy, and he's doing great in jiu-jitsu, and Life of Fred has been an awesome one for mathematics. As your kids get older, Life of Fred's dope. You can homeschool all the way up to college level with the Life of Fred books for mathematics. And it's all in story form. So again, it's going to speak to them in a way that's deeper than just fill out the fucking answer,
Man. And how do you protect your kids from the propaganda?
So this is a big one.
Because it seems like it's everywhere.
The propaganda is everywhere. We have Bear goes to nature school once a week. And we've got friends, the GM's one of my best friends who runs the farm. And he's got 3 kids. They're all homeschooled too. And his eldest is 11. And so she's at nature school a couple grades above. And she wanted to tell her friends we did a steer harvest on our land, and she said yes to participating in the field dressing. She also said yes to working on the skull. So she took out the tongue, and she took out different parts of the skull, which for an 11-year-old girl, that's a lot, dude. Like, and that's what she wanted. You know, and I was like, wow, that shows you're ready. Like, you could handle a hunt if you were up for that. You know, that's right around the age, or younger if they're ready. Every kid's different. But that shows me the sign, my little niece, you're ready. You know, like, and she was so thrilled to talk about her nature school. And the second she brought up the harvest, you know, she heard all the vegan shit from her friend on like why we should be eating crickets and how cows are destroying the earth and all this stuff. And it's like, there's so many, it's really tough, but you're going to bump into people like that all the time. Even in jiu-jitsu, we're in Austin. Austin is super woke. And it's a mixed bag of people that are just outside Austin that travel to Austin to train, and people that are actually from Austin. And it's a mixed bag of people that are from California and people that were born in Texas. And, you know, there's a lot of Teslas. There's a lot of cricket eaters. And if you want to do that, cool. But if you understand the science on regeneration, you have to have ruminant animals. They're a cornerstone. You look at anything from Alan Savory's work. Like I said, you watch Biggest Little Farm or Kiss the Ground. Common Ground's not out yet, but it's fucking amazing, dude. It's the follow-up to Kiss the Ground. And they're showing you can do this at scale, right? And the thing that's necessary is animals, period. You know, so they're not hurting the system. If they're done in a regenerative way, it's a closed loop. And that helps recycle carbon back into the ground. For 500 years, it can sequester carbon. And then you're getting much better food out of that, much better grass for the animals, and much better meat for people who eat grass-fed, grass-finished meat, right? So, anywho, you can't really protect them, I guess is the long way of saying that. They're going to run into things. The key isn't teaching them what to think. It's teaching them how to think. So when I ask her, how did that experience feel for you? When you got to hold that animal's warm head in your lap with a little towel on your pants, and you looked it in its eyes when you cut the tongue out. It felt a lot, right? You felt a lot. You might have felt sad. You might have felt grossed out. You might have felt some weird sense of joy. What are the feelings like, right? And that's just not me programming her. It's saying, feel that. Tell me what you felt about that, right? Whatever those things were, they were multi-pronged, right? It was a lot of different feelings, just like the hunt itself. In addition to that, those were some of the realest feelings she's probably ever experienced, right? It was a fucking first experience. And this is at 11 now, she's the most aware that she's ever been. At 12, it'll be the most aware, right, as she continues to grow. So the most aware version of herself has this experience. That's a powerful fucking experience. Don't let anyone take that away from you because they don't understand it. That's your experience, and it's 100% real. And it does matter, and our prayers matter, and the life of that animal matters. How we eat that thing nose to tail. No wasted pieces. Everything we wanted from the animal, we took. Everything we didn't, we placed it in this corner of the land where the coyotes came, the vultures came, and they regenerated that right on the spot till it was picked clean. And then we spread the bones out throughout the land to feed back to the land. Daniel Griffith taught me this one cool thing too. Bones actually decay at the rate at which the soil can accept the calcium. At the exact rate soil can accept the calcium from the bones. That's pretty fucking remarkable. It's just like, wow. All right. So, when it comes to different ideologies and things and then again, like critical race theory is a little bit more important to me than food, because I can give 100 reasons why I need to eat meat from a genetic standpoint to a health and wellness standpoint. I could spend this whole podcast telling you like 50% of the population would die if they went 100% vegan. And according to Chris Masterjohn, PhD, if you're 98% vegan, but 2% you make shellfish like oysters or scallops or beef liver, that 2% can be enough to right the malnutrition you're getting from the 98% of your food. It can be enough to counteract a vegan diet if 2% are these very select foods, right? We could rabbit hole all that stuff. That's not as important. Teaching somebody that they're born racist because of the color of their skin, that's racist. And that fact that people can't get that, either through their own guilt or their own whatever, it's fucking mind-blowing. you know? And so like I've had like one of Bear's best friends is half black, half white. His father fought in the UFC and good friends with mom. And he is very tan. So he looks more black than white. And he's dark as fuck. And like there's no dad's super dark from Africa, right? He's not like kind of black, he's black. There's nothing weird about that. There's nothing that gets said about that. It's his best friend. He doesn't know what fucking color his skin is. He said sometimes he's like, yeah, I want to get as tan as my buddy. And I'm like, well, it's kind of an uphill battle. You know, he's going to always have a little bit better tan than you, buddy, because we like getting in the sun and like getting tans. If he stayed inside all year and you went outside all year, you might get close, but he still probably got you beat. You know, so like that's the only conversation around skin color that happens is just the differences. There's no differences in who they are. There's no differences in what they think. There's no differences in how they treat each other. They're fucking best friends and have been from the jump, you know, and because dad's a fighter, those two are cut from a different cloth and they recognize it, even unspokenly. They're not like, oh, your dad was in the UFC. Oh, mine too. Like none of that. They just know when we get in a bouncy house, we can tear shit up a little different than most kids do and not get upset about getting knocked around by each other. So like they bonded on that, you know, and that's what kids do. They find something that they love about one another and they think about that thing. They don't think about the thing that makes them different from one another, you know? So teaching kids that is and again, it has a purpose. You look into control oligarchs and things like that. There's a point to these things, but nefariously, but at the same time, if you teach kids how to think, they can see right through that shit. You know, I've got buddies that have their kids in normal schools or really high-end private schools, and they talk about the gender stuff, you know, like gender day, and they get into a whole thing on it. And you know, one of my buddy's son's 13 years old. He's in New York, which is obviously it's New York City. And he's like, you know, Dad, it feels like they're just patronizing us. He goes, what do you mean? And he goes like, no kids my age give a fuck what gender you are. Like if you want to be a boy or a girl, cool. If you want to be something in between, cool. Like it doesn't bother any of us. Like nobody's like, fuck those guys for trying to be this way. Like we're all understanding. Like why don't we have to have a day where it's force fed down our throats? All of us are already there. They're trying to get us to become the thing we already were. None of us judge each other because of what their gender is or whatever they're trying to claim they are. We don't give a fuck. So why have a whole day based on that, right? He's like, you're fucking patronizing me. They're making me look like an idiot. And that's really good to hear. It's good to hear that they can see right through shit like that. So if they know how to think for themselves. And in that example in and of itself, you know, he truly doesn't care. He truly isn't bothered. Like when I was young and I saw two dudes kiss, I remember asking my parents, like, that happens? My mom was like, yeah, sometimes that happens. And I was like, all right, that happens. There was no burn in hell or any of the Bible shit laced in. It was just like, cool, dudes love each other sometimes and make out. And it's no big fucking deal. You know, like there's literally no big deal. So I don't think, you know, I mean, there's no way to protect them. And if we really think about protection, Jordan Peterson's really right. You don't want to build a safety bubble for your kids where they don't get to experience other viewpoints or pushback or the world as it is, right? Like you don't sugarcoat the world so that it's weak around your soft kid. You make your kids stronger so that they can handle all of the troubles and trials of the world. And so, again, it comes back down to how we parent, how we educate, and all those. What are the gifts that we're leaving them with to prepare them for that world that's going to have pushback at every turn? That might look at my son and say, "You're a white male. Something's wrong with you." You know, that might look at any part, you know, of our family and try to pick it apart. You know, so it's important that we have those foundational pieces set and that we really do hold that together as a family via dinners and all the things that keep a family. Like never been a more important time to eat with your kids, never been a more important time to have fun with your kids so that you're not always the disciplinarian or the rule maker, but you're actually just goofing off and tickling them and fucking playing games and running around playing tag. Like they have to experience that from their parents as well. If they only experience joy from friends and only experience discipline from their parents, that's what's going to drive them to the peer bonding. But if they get to experience joy from their parents and know their parents can soften up and show them the fun side and that they're a big kid too, like that's a huge fucking win. Huge win.
What about phones? How long are you going to keep those away?
This is a great question. Okay.
because it gets. I get all of that, and my kid is only 2 years old, so you like kind of learn on the way, and obviously I'm trying to keep the screens away from him as much as possible. And I found out like what when they don't know, they don't know. It's the best thing. Like he doesn't know about ice cream, he doesn't know about chocolate. Like he
Yes.
knows about it, but he has no he doesn't really know what it tastes like or that he wants it. He just knows like when he points at a picture, he's like, oh, this is chocolate, and like that's it, kind of.
You touched on a very important piece. What is the baby's first food?
Milk.
Yeah, and what becomes after that? The first thing that goes in their body. A lot of people do like applesauce, something sweet. That changes the palate permanently. They'll start out with a palate that wants sweet.
Yeah.
So that sweet becomes baseline.
Well, we started with beef.
Exactly. Yeah, chicken liver pate was Bear's first. The beef liver worst was Wolfie's first. They have nothing else to compare it to. Soft-boiled egg yolk smashed with a little bit of salt. Avocado, ripe avocado with a little bit of salt. Like that was it. Those rotations along with milk that we mixed in till they came off the boob entirely, and like that, they don't have anything else to compare it to. So part of the issue, if I'm raising wizards, is that they're going to interact with muggles.
Exactly.
And if I have, my son dialed in a certain way and his friends start getting cell phones, which we've already seen, and he's 8, and he's got a friend that just turned 7 who has a cell phone, and don't worry, there's just only certain apps allowed on it, and I have the parental control. Like, you got an EMF generator in your fucking little girl's pocket. That's first problem, right? Big problem. Secondly, there's no reason for them to have that. So like the first place a kid would ever need a phone is when they can drive. When you can drive, you can have a phone to call me. And Leonard Sachs talks about this as well. There's nothing that says they need a fucking smartphone. You're going to hand them a $1,500 computer that they can like access everything on the way. There's apps that allow you to bypass parental controls. Super easy to find out about from another friend who already has the app, right? So like you get them a flip phone that doesn't have access to any of that. And you have computers at home where they can work online and do the things. And there's monitoring because you're there with them. Like you should be watching the TV with them first and foremost. I see a lot of problems with kids who have full access to YouTube. A lot of weird shit on YouTube, and parents like, oh, he's just watching YouTube Kids. Dude, there's some weird shit on YouTube Kids, like really fucking weird shit with weirdo people, like, yeah, not good. So I think that's a part of the relationship too. Like, what are you guys watching together? And the problem with technology is that parents get their ass kicked from a job they don't like, a relationship they haven't figured out yet, how to reconnect in the good old days before you had kids. Dad doesn't like being put on the back burner, which he's going to be as long as the kids are around. There's so many things that kind of crack the idea of what a family is supposed to be. And then the second they start getting pushback from their kids, here you go, take the iPad. Daddy just needs 30 minutes. Take the iPad, I just need an hour. Take the iPad, I just need 90 minutes, right? And I can see that. Like it's funny when they talk about robots and shit like that, like robot nannies, robot this, robot cleaners. Like one of the first things they'll do is they'll have the robot able to entertain the kids. And it'll be educational, right? So they can teach them, certain, ChatGPT, talk to ChatGPT if you're your robot, that kind of shit.
Safety and
there's no replacement for you. Like you want to teach your kids how to be a person in the world that you grew up in that is changing rapidly. They need contact with you, right? My kids need contact with me as much as possible. And I've often said, I would rather take less money and work less and see my kids more than make more money now so that I can leave them more at the end when they don't fucking need me and they already have jobs for their own. Kids don't need money from their parents. They need support. They need attention more than anything.
Time.
Yeah, they need your time. They need to fucking be there. So I don't know. I don't think I answered your question at all. But we were talking about cell phones. Yeah. So
like what age?
I think 16 years old. But honestly, I didn't drive till I was 17 or 18. Really. I mean, I got my license when I was 17. I really didn't start driving till I was 18.
Because I feel like the phone is the most powerful tool in the propaganda. It's really like how they sometimes say it's like a mini missile.
Yeah. Yeah, it's right there. I mean, it's right there, and you can access everything with it if it's the wrong type of phone, right? I really don't see the need for that. And you know, homeschooling makes it a lot easier. If they're in, like, if he was continuing at Waldorf, they have a rule too: no kids, unless you're 16, can bring a phone to school. So right there, as a school, they've set the table pretty good. So if your kid's 12 and like, well, Tommy's got his own cell phone, like he can't bring it to school, just like you can't bring it to school. So none of that shit matters. You know, have a landline so that Tommy's got to call me to pass the phone to you at a reasonable hour, not so he can text you at 9 o'clock at night. And this is all in Leonard Sack's books, The Collapse of Parenting, as well. Like, he deep dives this exact subject because it's a big one. For us, I think it's going to be a little easier just because the fact that we are homeschooling, we're raising the kids on the land. If we fill their days full of fucking dope activities and things that they really enjoy, and they do, like Bear's, one of his favorite things is going and picking up all the chicken and the duck eggs. And he finds a goose egg, it's like a big deal. You know, because we only have one female goose. It's 4 of them, but only one female goose. So he's like, oh, I got the goose egg. And, you know, like the more activities we have that are going to build foundation, connect him to nature, connect him to the land, show him that what he does actually matters. You know, like if a kid builds a treehouse and they go sit in that treehouse, they participated in creating that thing. It's a big deal. If a kid plants a tree, and Bear's done this more than once now, where he plants trees and he's like, that's my tree. You know, and he walks around. Now he can finally climb his tree. He planted one tree from seed, a cottonwood, and it grew like Jack and the Beanstalk. And he climbs that thing every fucking day at our house. Every day. It's right in our front yard. So think about little things like that, you know, like that tree will continue to grow. We're going to plant another one at the new crib and watch that thing shoot through the roof just so we can start climbing on that in a couple of years. You know, but I think those things are tangible aspects that connect them to a real reality. One of the reasons I quit playing video games, because I loved video games. I played Madden all day long in college. I'd wake up, I had a 4-foot bong that I couldn't reach. I'd wake up my roommate to light it for me, and I'd rip that bong and I'd play. I only had school 2 days a week in my redshirt year. So Tuesdays, Thursdays, I took all 12 units. And I was loaded all day long. I'd play video games for 9 hours. Sometimes we'd go out to the pool to see if we could fucking, you know, as a stoner, just peek across the pool and see some hot ladies and then go back to fucking playing video games. I had a plant medicine journey while I was fighting that showed me, like, in Grand Theft Auto, you can play, there's the mission and then there's like a game within the game. And I never cared for the game within the game. It's like, the point is to fucking win Grand Theft Auto. It's not to fucking do some stupid side game that does nothing for me. It's just a game within a game. It's meaningless. And I connected those dots on mushrooms. I was like, oh, every game I play, whether it's Madden or Call of Duty or any of these things, they're games within the game. This is the fucking game. This is the ceremony. It's not just when I eat mushrooms or when I go to the Amazon. The whole thing is a ceremony. The whole thing is a game. And it's here for my growth. It's here for whatever I want to do. I don't even have to grow. I can just fuck off the whole time if I want and literally get full choice over what I want to do while I'm here. How do I want to spend that time? Do I want to waste another minute of it playing a game within a game? You know, and there's a great book called Finite Games and Infinite Games by James P. Carse. He passed away right after doing a great podcast with Paul Check. And I love that book. And some people are like, oh, it's overhyped. I mean, it's written like the Tao Te Ching. It's in verse form. I think 81 verses, just like the Tao. But it's done in a way that's meant to unlock different pieces. And finite games are dope. Like football's dope, fighting is dope. Playing board games, we're playing Uno last night. Had hella fun playing Uno. You know, like that's great stuff to do with the family. Not getting lost in the finite game is also important. That you're playing a finite game within the infinite game, and the infinite game has no end. It has no winners and losers. The way to make the game better is to bring more people into the infinite game, so that we're all aware that we're playing that bigger game. So I feel very fortunate having had that experience earlier on that pulled me out of video games, because that's a big one. We don't, there's no video games in our house. You know, and I see a lot of other kids that they have video games and they have some of the syndromes from video games. And Leonard Sachs really deep dives that as well. I'll send you a podcast that you can link to in the show notes if people just want to get a 90-minute deep dive from this guy for their parents. It's brilliant. There's a lot of science on kids with violent video games. That's not good. There's science on kids on regular games. That's not good. There's science on the difference between boys and girls with games. That's illuminating, but also not good, you know? So I think having that understanding gives me the knowledge and the wisdom to know what's allowed in the house and what isn't. From cell phones to video games to any part of that's not going to fulfill and drive them to be a better person. Don't need to have it.
Is there a danger where they hit puberty and then they just trying to do everything the opposite of what their parents taught them?
There's a danger of that all the time, right?
Or do you
And
fear that?
I do and I don't. And here's where I'll get a little...
Because like when I look at my life, I reversed a lot of things that my parents tried to teach me, but when I look very close, it's only the things that maybe their generation got the wrong way. Because like they wanted me to eat vegetables and I always wanted to eat meat, and I changed that.
Yeah.
But they didn't want me to play video games, and I never played a video game my whole life, and I tried and I always felt awful after it, and I never started playing it, and that kind of stuck with me. So it's kind of weird when they always say like, well, because like I have this conversation with my mom all the time, like because I want my son to be an athlete, but she always says like if you force somebody too much, they might do the opposite. But I feel like if you are that role model and you give somebody so much joy, it's different than forcing somebody to eat vegetables and then they become a meat eater. Like that's kind of obvious.
Well, there's both things here. For one, this is great. You know, if you follow carnivore doc Paul Saladino, there's a lot of science on why your kids don't eat broccoli or kale or a bunch of other. Dr. Stephen Gundry, who wrote The Plant Paradox, table that discussion, right? So like that wasn't a real thing that you push back on. That was you listening to your body.
And also they still had that pyramid propaganda.
Yeah, of course, right?
Yeah.
So they had it back ass where 6 servings of grain, 1 serving of dairy, whatever the thing looks like, The other piece of that, what was the other piece of that?
That I wanted my son to be an athlete.
Yeah, so here's this thing. Have you seen Trophy Kids? So this is a great documentary on Netflix.
Yes.
Trophy Kids is by Chris Bell, who's a buddy, Mark Bell. And they show parents who have gone off the fucking deep end trying to create the next Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, if you follow Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan, they had that parent, right? And the sad part is thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of kids have that fucking parent. But only one becomes Michael Jordan. Only one becomes Lance Armstrong. Only one becomes Tiger Woods. And all those other hundreds of thousands of kids hate their fucking dad and hate the sport they grew up in, right? I had a buddy in college who was a great golfer, fucking quit the game for 10 years. He finally was able to reconnect with his father and play golf with him and enjoy the game. After a 10-year break, he couldn't fucking stand it. And Pavel Tsatsouline talks about this. One of my favorite books on strength training is called Easy Strength. And Pavel, coming from the Soviet Union, he said that in the 80s, they would basically look at your genes and say like, mother is 6'6", father is 6'8", you will be a swimmer. And they stick them in the pool at 6 months old and force them to swim 7 days a week until they're 18. And he said most people at 18 years old would rather die in a coal mine than do the sport that was selected for them. Right? There's that much pushback. So there is a happy medium. You got to let go of greatness, right? Your kid will select greatness or not based on what they want to do with it. How hard they want to push themselves. The key, if you want them to push themselves, is to set them up with other peers that do that, right? So you find a jiu-jitsu school where the kids there take it serious, like Art of Jiu-Jitsu in Costa Mesa. I wouldn't move back to California, but they give a fuck, and you can see it at tournaments. Every one of those kids knows how to wrestle. Every one of those kids knows jiu-jitsu. Every one of those kids is strength training. Every one of those kids is practicing more than 1 time per day. As kids, they're all homeschooled. They're all fucking training 2 or 3 times a day. They may peter out at 20. They may peter out at 30, where they're like, fuck jiu-jitsu. My dad put me in, 10 practices a week since I was 6 years old. I'm done. We don't know how that's going to pan out. But if you wanted your kid to understand excellence, you immerse them in excellence. You surround them by excellence. You surround them by a coach that can gently pull it out of them to be the best version of themselves. That can't be your job because you can't be the parent at the same time, right? And you don't want them to turn on you and say like, yeah, well, you always forced me to do this. I can't fucking stand it. But if they're interested in it, like we didn't select violin for Bear. We said, you're going to learn music and you're going to learn martial arts. You will be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. That's guaranteed. Because then I don't have to worry about you, right? Like I need you to have a certain level of proficiency. You could give up jiu-jitsu if you go into Muay Thai or something else, but you always circle back to jiu-jitsu. You could give up jiu-jitsu for a period of time to wrestle in wrestling season. Cool, but you're always coming back to jiu-jitsu. And whatever instrument you pick, have that instrument. If you get tired of it, pick a different instrument. But you're going to learn music every fucking year till you're 18. You're going to have a relationship with music. You're going to know how to read music. Whether that changed from violin to cello to piano, that's up to you. But you have to have that relationship. And then setting them up with the right people, I think, is where they can come in to find that for themselves. If you push too hard, it's trophy kids, and it's really easy to see when you watch trophy kids. There's a part where your fucking stomach just sinks. You're like, oh my God, dude, damn, dad's brutal. And you can learn from that, like Bear will cheat on push-ups, when he gets to like 15, he can't do them. His hips will go down and his hips will go up, his arms don't move. And I'm like, dude, you're not even going down all the way. And Tosh will elbow me, like, no correcting. It's like, okay, you're right. So like I can utilize that trophy kids to learn from me. Cool, I don't need to correct him. He can pretend he got 20. And when he goes to practice, another coach will say, you got to go down all the way, right? It doesn't have to be me that says go down all the way. And that's him going to failure anyways, right? If he failed and he's just cheating the rest of the way, he already went as hard as he could. He went to failure. It doesn't matter if it's fucking 15 or 500. He went to failure. That's good enough. And I think, I want the very best for my kids. And I've been a lifelong athlete. Athletics saved my life. When I was 8 years old, like my parents fought all the time. If I didn't have football, I would have cracked. Football was my outlet for all the aggression, all the pain. Cracking heads with guys on the football field was perfect medicine for that. And then fighting ended up being, because I didn't play at all at Arizona State, it ended up being like a second chance as an athlete. And as I mentioned, earlier on in the beginning of the podcast, like that was my second mountain that provided me all the information and knowledge I need now to have an entire career in podcasting and coaching because of that. So mad gratitude on how all that unfolded. But it was the listening, it was this constant listening to what do I need now and giving myself that. And everyone is different. Like Bear is way different than his sister. She can play by herself all fucking day long. She's just had it like that. She can read books, even though she can't read. She'll turn the pages and analyze each page since she was like 8 months old. She's just immersed. She's in her own world. She's a different person. And so with that, their needs are going to be different. But finding those things where they can fulfill their desires and push themselves in their own way, that's all they need to excel.
Having read so much literature, what would you say for your like personality is like key for like your best version of yourself?
And Paul says it best. He says, not too much, not too little. So one of the reasons I love Easy Strength is there's a ton of wisdom in that book that goes beyond strength training. One of the things they say, if it's worth doing, do it every day. And so there's actually a style of training that Verkhoshansky and Sif came out with in the 80s from Russia, where they said everyone's trying to move the bar at 80, 90, and 100% of their 1 rep max to improve their 1 rep max. What if we move the bar at 50% of our 1 rep max? Will that still affect the 100%? And they were right. And the beautiful thing about moving 50% of your 1 rep max is you're never sore. You can lift 5 days a week, do it damn near every day. And I appreciate that, having trained like a madman in fighting. And I would still come home from jiu-jitsu having trained hard when Bear was young, and he'd jump on my back and I'd be like, oh, come on, dude. Like, I don't want to react to my son that way. Like, yeah, fucking be a bull in a china shop. Come barrel into me. I need to be less sore for you to have the dad that I want to be, right? I don't want to be mad at my son because he barreled into me and I was sore from jiu-jitsu that I don't compete in anymore. That doesn't make sense. So finding training styles like Easy Strength were essential because it allowed me to kind of extrapolate this into other areas. Finding guys like Dr. Andy Galpin and Brian McKenzie who wrote Unplugged. They talk about like zone 2, nasal breathing only exercise where you tape your mouth shut, you do a 10K row, listen to a podcast, no hype music, listen to Audible, and knock that out under an hour. Like that's really good cardio for the zone 2. And still finding time, even though I hate it, with guys like Tim Kennedy to do some high intensive intervals because nothing replaces that shit,
Yeah.
So like I got to meter that in. But, right now my training it's a little bit of everything. It's 1 boxing, kickboxing a week. It's 1 jiu-jitsu a week on Mondays. It's 1 or 2 strength and conditioning days. It's 1 or 2 runs and 1 maybe a distance, 1 maybe some sprints. And I sprinkle those in throughout the week. And I sauna and ice bath when I can. I hit mobility, hopefully 5 days a week, where I'm really opening up the body, working on Kelly Surratt stuff from the Ready State. I almost said his first website, Mobility WOD, that changed. But and the reason I mention the physical shit first, the training first, because for my particular personality, my mental and emotional state is infinitely better if I've exercised the demons. If I fucking move my body and I sweat and I do it within a range that leaves me with more energy than when I started, I've potentiated myself for everything else in the world. I've actually made myself better at being a dad. I've made myself better for the rigors of relationship with my wife. I've made myself a better person, and I've given myself more energy for my work. So it's not a headache that I have to sit down and knock out emails or do ads for the podcast, do whatever the fuck I have to do. I can just do that because my cup is full from the beginning. So one of the things that's super important is fill your cup first. And that looks different for everybody. You know, my wife's a yogi, super bendy, doesn't really like lifting weights, but knows that's the thing that's going to make her better is lifting weights because she's already got the flexibility. She's already got the running ability. So finding the minimum effective dose of the things that round you out and make you more whole, I think that's a holistic approach to movement. You know, and that's one of Check's 4 doctors. The last 4 doctors you'll ever need. You have Dr. Movement, all your movement practices from mobility to running to lifting, martial arts, pickleball, any of that. And there's a movement. Dr. Diet, what are the things I put in my body from what kind of water, is the water structured, all that shit, down to the supplements that I put in my body and the food I put in my body. Dr. Quiet, what is my meditation and sleep practice? What are my working in practices? And then Dr. Happiness. Like, can I check the box every day? So I'm not just living for a period of time where it's like the next 30 years are going to suck, but when I retire, then I'll do what I want to do. That's a fallacy, right? You never get there. Can I do something I love every single day? Can I have joy in what I do every single day? Things that bring me happiness are going to be different than things that bring my wife happiness. Sometimes there'll be overlay, but can I make sure that I'm checking that box every single day? Because that's what makes life worth living. And if I have my happiness every day, if I fill my cup every day, that's the cup that overflows into all the cups next to it, whether it be my family, my work, anything else.
Do you also try to, like, do you struggle with screens, being inside, sitting?
I don't have any problem sitting still as long as I'm moving my ass. I used to have a big problem with meditating. It was like I needed to exhaust myself, which is funny because like the physical practice of yoga was designed to help you lay still in shavasana or sit still in meditation. And one of the things that really helped me with that was a lady named Emily Fletcher. She has an online course, I think it's called Ziva, Z-I-V-A, zivameditation.com. And it's a 6,000-year-old meditation from the Vedas. Really what stemmed from transcendental meditation was from the same birthplace as her meditation. And so it's mantra-based. I've tried hundreds of different meditation practices, binaural beats, you fucking name it, you know, YouTube channels with 532 hertz, whatever the right coding is to knock me out. And nothing ever really worked until getting to sit with her and go through that and use a mantra as the vehicle to drive me deeper and deeper and deeper. And we did an excellent podcast. We've done a couple of them, but the first one I really tried to extract what she had taught me in our 3 days together and give that. Like 80% of what she's taught me is here. You know, if you don't want to take the online course, just listen to that podcast and you'll understand a lot. Like you can't quiet the mind. That's not the goal. It's like saying, I want to get a resting heart rate of 0. Your resting heart rate of 0 happens when you're dead. You don't turn the mind off. The job of the mind is to think. And it's a good job, right? We're trying to train the mind to not think as often as it does and just to be aware of it. But there should be no judgment there. When the mind works, mantra, mantra, mantra. And you just slowly go deeper. And the mind works again, okay, mantra, mantra, mantra. There's no judgment about the mind or any of that. She says you could go in a 20-minute meditation. If you rabbit-holed thought for 18 minutes and caught it at the very end and mantraed once away from it, that's a victory. That checks the box. You meditated today. You did her style. Right? And that takes all pressure off of being good at any of it, you know, like, and you know, most people know, like, if you've done jujitsu or something like that, to do anything worthwhile, you're going to suck for a while. And that's a part of what you're saying yes to. I'm going to get my ass kicked at this for a while, but if I keep going, I'll get better. So I think taking that beginner's mind from jujitsu and fighting into meditation with her teaching style really allowed me to accomplish that. So I could find that. Now I have no trouble sitting still at all. None at all, especially if I time it right. You know, usually early to mid-afternoon between like 2 and 3 is when I start getting tired and I'll want a second cup of coffee or something like that. So I just started throwing my afternoon meditation in right in there. And I have all the energy in the world. if I can hit that. So it doesn't happen every day because some days I got to work, until fucking 6 p.m. Some days I don't have the luxury of that, but a lot of days I do. And when I hit that meditation, I'm a better person the whole rest of the day for it.
Do you care about what's going to happen this year? Because it seems like you really control your surroundings, your family, your nutrition. Are you worried about what's going to happen this year with elections and the open border and all that shit? Or
yeah, there's a lot there. I've gone kind of both directions since 2020, where I really opened up the can of worms for the first time. I had heard guys like David Icke and Alex Jones before 2020, but once it became clear that what they were saying was at least in part true, that was a holy shit moment for me. Like an example, we moved into a new complex in South Austin. And when we moved there, I was like, cool, there's fucking cameras on every light. That's awesome. When I leave town, I want to know my wife and kids are safe. That'll deter crime. It's like, I called the property manager one day because some dude in a black car was out taking photos of our house. I didn't realize it was the appraisal guy was out there. But I hit him up and I was like, yo, where do those cameras go? I need to see this license plate of this guy who's outside taking photos of my house. And he goes, I have no idea. And I was like, what do you mean you have no idea? You built this whole complex. And he goes, well, that was just a part of the city plans. It's like, no one voted on this shit. Yet we have security cameras all over the fucking world. We have more cameras in the US than they do in China. And China's already doing quite well with social credit and shit like that, right? So, you can spend, and the reason I bring this up is because you can find out, red pill yourself and find out a lot of that shit's true. And it can fucking pull you apart because you can rabbit that hole, you go down the rabbit hole of negativity, and the more truth that you find there, the harder it is to swallow, the harder it is to say, what the fuck is happening right now? And I think the balance point for me is leaning back on what I know to be true, leaning back on the things that I love, leaning back on my family, leaning back on my practices that I really enjoy, the things that make life worth living. And if it's worth living for, it's worth dying for. Really holding that inside and surrendering to all possible outcomes. If I'm not attached, doesn't mean I don't have a vested interest in us not becoming, a fucking one world government that's run by a dictatorship and technocracy and all the fucking terms. Like, I don't want it to go there. Yet, if we're headed there, it's better to have my head on my shoulders than to know what's worth fighting for. And if I'm going to die for it too, that's okay. I talked to Rob Wolf about that. He's like, look, if it's just a mistake in the science and genuine people making small mistakes, then it is what it is. If it's depopulation, then I'll die on the fucking hill fighting to save my family. And he lit me up because it was like, that's it right there. There's one sentence about that. If people are genuinely making mistakes, with the job and doing things that are generally just geared towards money making and it's not nefarious, all right, let's right the wrongs and let's learn from that moving forward. If it is depopulation and there's a big fucking agenda to move that, I will die on the fucking hill fighting for what I love. And I think with that understanding, I can let go of what's coming. With all the people crossing the border, we'll see how that pans out, right? It depends. It's gonna impact us all in different areas. And there's people that don't live in border states that don't think it's a big deal. They're getting flights, buses, tickets are paid for them to come into your town. Like, it's gonna affect everybody. And I think, what are the common threads? I've been to a lot of these countries in Central and South America and Mexico. I fucking love them. Love the people. Most people there are fucking rad. And, if that's who's coming across, cool, we can talk. If it's something more nefarious, that's why I go to fucking Sheepdog. Like, I will make sure I know what I'm doing with a wide variety of weaponry and that I can actually protect my family. Because I don't, and Tim's, so many great cops trained with him. And they'll say, like, in a bad situation, we're coming to fill out a fucking report. We're not coming there to save the day. If they're there 8 minutes, 5 minutes for some places in the city, a lot can happen in 5 minutes. Like, the worst can happen in 5 minutes. Shit that's worse than death can happen in 5 minutes. So it is up to us to understand that. There's always going to be a certain population of people that can't defend themselves. You don't have to call them sheep. You can call them whatever, right? Just muggles, whatever the fucking word. It doesn't have to be derogatory. They're just always going to be the people that are still used to daddy government telling them what to do and suckling off the teat of wherever their shitty job's giving them, they're not going to change. We don't need them to. That's okay, right? I don't become a sheepdog and a protector because I dislike those people. I become a sheepdog because I love people. I love humans, and they don't need to change. You know, I had a vision once where I kept having real issues with my sister not wanting to do ayahuasca with me. And I had a vision. It was my 10th journey, and I saw all the drugs I'd introduced to her as a kid. And I was like, oh, she just assumes this is the next shitty drug I'm going to give her, you know, like ketamine-laced weed or what all the shit we'd party with. And I fully understood her reason for saying no. And then I fully understood I'm drinking for both of us. She doesn't need to. You know, as I become better, that impacts our relationship. It changes our relationship. It has to if I'm actually getting better. And that's enough. And as more and more people wake up to the understanding that there's no one here to protect you but you, when they say yes to that responsibility and you know, take a class at Sheepdog and find someone to train with regularly and actually, you know, be comfortable with a gun, the world becomes safer because you have good people with guns in their hands.
That's Tim always he taught me that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's more out of love, less than out of fear.
Yeah.
You know, he wants you to be less afraid and protect the people that you love.
Yeah, and I am less afraid. You know, I told you we took remember people are still on the fence about owning a weapon. The tactical response, the trauma response course that we took is cheaper than all the other classes, and it should be the fucking most expensive one. It's the best class. You know, like we're learning how to apply tourniquets. I got one on my fanny pack at all times. I got another med kit in the back of my truck. Tosh has a med kit and a tourniquet on her at all times. You can save a life, you know, from a gunshot wound. You can do a lot with a fucking tourniquet and a med bag that's $175. If you know what to do with it, you can save lives. You know, like you can really help people in their time of need and getting them to a place where they can get the treatment they need so you don't just bring them to the hospital dead. You know, and I think that in and of itself helps me sleep better at night. You know, it's not just like I'm not worried that we're going to get in a fucking shootout. You know, it's going to be the Alamo or some shit like that. But being on a farm, we've got a skid steer. We're going to get an excavator. We got a tractor. Like a lot of bad scenarios can happen with heavy equipment like that and kids. So just understanding that too, you know, like we want to be able to save lives, and that gives us the ability to have a far greater chance of doing so. That's worth it. You take my money, take my time on a weekend, I'm yours. And I'll come back year after year to stay brushed up on that. And keep bringing people into it. You know, like I said, we brought the whole farm squad out for that. There's like 8 of us that wanted to know it. And it was fucking rad. Now we've got 8 people that know what the fuck they're doing and know when they open their bag, it's going to say match, and it's going to walk them through everything we just learned piece by piece on how to address this person and keep them alive. That's worth knowing. You know, and I think there's a lot there. How far you want to take that, you know, or do you know, like Tim said, you can come to one of these classes and shoot and do well, but don't pretend you're a sheepdog if you're not. You know, if you're not willing to carry and hold that responsibility, that's okay. But don't pretend you are. You know, don't say, I want the sheepdog and blah, 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 and like, my gun's in my safe at home. You're not doing it then, right? I'm doing it. My wife's doing it. We're doing it. And I think there's a lot of people that are saying yes to that call.
Yeah, especially these days.
Yeah, brother.
I feel like it's been a wake-up call for many people. I feel like when you said like you were less talented, I feel like you took that and you craved all these like knowledge. You educated yourself on so many things because you were like less talented UFC fighter.
Yeah.
So, and same with the pandemic, it feels like it always opens up a window for greatness when something very, like when it seems like it's unfair or you're treated less in your life, kinda, you can really turn it around and thrive on that. Like,
yeah.
Has that been like that for you in your life?
Absolutely. And I think that's, you know, a better way, a more practical way of saying, you know, when I get a push from spirit, when I get a nudge in the right direction, that's when I'm speaking to that. Circumstances happen to everybody. Life throws curveballs at us all the fucking time. It's just, the only constant is change, right? So we're guaranteed to have change that happens where we're like, that was great. And we're also guaranteed to have change. We're like, that doesn't appear great. I'm not sure how this is going to pan out, but let me see if I can work with this. And, one of the things that I've really gravitated towards is, you can use hindsight as foresight. And if I look behind me at every challenging, shitty part of my life, all of that panned out to something better. It's not just a cliche. I can tell you that some of the hardest moments I had as a kid from my parents fighting taught me exactly what not to do with my wife. We've never yelled at each other in front of our kids, not fucking once, right? I have that gift from my parents that could not say sorry, could not back down from one another. And I could go down the list, right? I could go down any list of something I said, this probably had a big impact on me.
Maybe more than a good moment.
What's that? Yeah, for sure.
Right?
For sure. Exactly.
Because the good moments, everybody can live the good moments, but
you just take it for granted.
Yes.
Like, you're looking at that. And it's funny because, so my college sweetheart, before Natasha, we were together for 7 years. She had the first family that I was around where I was like, you guys work. You're a fully functioning family. Like, this is weird. I've never seen it before. Even my friends, all parents got all divorced and shit, And I'm like, or they'd fight, get in a big ass fight and send the kids home and we're having a sleepover, And it's like, oh man, it's like they couldn't keep their shit together. And this family worked. And it was the first time I had really seen that. And no one in that family thought of it that way. I was like, oh, you're in here. It's like a fish in water. You have no idea how awesome you guys have it. And I can see it perfectly because I came from something a little different, So, but yeah, to your point, the hardship causes the biggest change. You look at stressor, you lift weights, you got a fucking great physique. That didn't come to you just from sitting on the couch or doing push-ups and air squats. It might have started from push-ups and air squats, but you have to change the stressor. You have to change the dynamic and continue to push the body beyond that to continue to get the growth that you want. The same thing is true of spiritual practices. The same thing is true for mental, emotional equanimity and balance and intelligence. If I want to have that, stressors are the thing that's going to bring me to a new plane of existence. And, it doesn't mean like when shit hits the fan, I'm not like, oh, great, this is going to turn out awesome in 10 years. If I just know that and remember that, I don't think of it that way. I hit the fucking panic button. And at the same time, like, we wouldn't have a farm right now if it wasn't for 2020. We wouldn't be doing half the shit we're doing right now if it wasn't because of the way that the world has unfolded in front of us. And I love everything we're doing. Like Tucker Max, good buddy. He's like, in 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if the world runs perfectly, the grid never goes down, there's no World War III, the US dollar doesn't peak and turn into Chinese currency, we don't end up on CBDCs or whatever the potential, right? No social credit scores, people take down all the cameras, there's a revolt, whatever the thing is. See the good guys come out on top and it's actually peaceful. Did I do anything wrong the last 10 years in teaching my kids how to hunt, in connecting them in nature, in getting them to put trees in the ground, in teaching them the education that I want them to have, a Socratic education like Tim talks about, right? That the whole family is involved with, that includes art. It includes skills like bow hunting and marksmanship with a rifle. That includes all these things. That includes jujitsu, which is gymnastics on steroids, right? It's like you're tumbling, you're learning it, and you're doing it with another human being. Is there any mistake in doing any of that? Fuck no, right? You just raised a competent, beautiful human being who's connected to the land and connected to themselves, who knows what it's like to lose and knows what it's like to win. And there's none of this, we're not keeping score right now. Like, no, dude, we are keeping score. And there is a winner and a loser in jiu-jitsu. And that's okay. That's the point, right? And it sucks to lose. And it feels great to win. But like Jocko said, you win or you learn, right? And I think that can be applied to the hard shit, right? You win and it's easy, or you learn from the tough stuff. And I think that applies to all things.
Absolutely. And then you're ready either way, no matter how the world pans out, even if it's great, right?
Yeah, absolutely, brother.
You have children that are ready for whatever. And I feel like it's going to be, like you said, life always comes at you anyways, even if it turns out to be all good and the world doesn't collapse. Something's going to happen, some relationship or job or whatever it is, and you'll be ready. Discipline.
Yeah, changing no matter what,
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely, brother. I'm stoked to have you on my podcast and get to show you the land.
I know. I really want to come out there.
Fuck yeah, brother.
Bro, I don't know if I've been to That yeah, especially like you said, like I've been to farms where it's like family farms, but not like somebody who is as active and thoughtful as you're doing it. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
many blessings. It's fucking rad. We get to try anything that works. We try. We're trying
Yeah.
electroculture. We're doing biodynamic amendments. We're doing a lot of stuff that's the best from the old days and combining them in unique, novel ways. And that's really what I did in the supplement game. I'd take something that worked and combine it with another thing that worked that people hadn't paired together to create something new that worked. And the 118-acre canvas it's a real deal. Like there's a lot of artistry. And my goal too for people coming to our land, is like it's a felt experience. When you go to Sedona, or you go to the beach, you get in the water, like it shifts you. You shifts you on all levels. And you can talk about grounding and all the other fucking electromagnetics of it or the energetics of it. They're all real. But that's what I want. I want a palpable experience for people when they come to the land, because it's had that much love poured into it. And it's all that love is turned back out through nature.
Oh, there's like beauty in doing simple things sometimes, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like especially with these like complex smartphones. Like last time I was just like having an axe and like taking apart wood. You have this joy of just presence.
Yeah.
And a simple task, you do it, you feel great. That's it.
Fuck yeah.
Right? And
Chop
then
wood, carry
you
water.
you get to do that all the time.
Yeah, brother.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. Even the big machines are fun. Like it's like the best thing a boy could have is a fucking big ass machine to move the earth with. It's really fun.
Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you as well, brother. Thank you.